Death is not an end, but rather a transition, a doorway through which the soul passes from one state of existence to another. Throughout recorded history, across diverse spiritual traditions and cultures, there have been countless testimonies of what occurs in those profound moments when the physical body releases its hold on the spirit. One of the most commonly reported experiences during this transition is the welcoming presence of departed loved ones. These are not mere hallucinations of a dying brain, as some materialists might suggest, but genuine spiritual encounters that transcend the limitations of physical perception. The veil between worlds thins as the soul prepares to cross over, allowing those who have gone before to assist in this sacred journey. Imagine, if you will, the comfort of seeing a beloved parent, grandparent, or friend, someone who has already navigated this passage, extending their hands in greeting as you approach the threshold between worlds. Their familiar presence serves as an anchor of love and reassurance during what might otherwise be a disorienting experience. They come not as ghosts or shadows, but as fully realized spiritual beings, often appearing younger and more vibrant than when they left their earthly forms. This phenomenon of spiritual reunion is not random. Those family members and friends who appear at the moment of transition are selected based on soul connections and emotional resonance. The soul that is departing is met by those with whom they share the deepest bonds of love and understanding, those who can most effectively ease their transition from material to spiritual existence. The great spiritual teacher Cayce spoke of these moments as homecomings, describing how the soul recognizes its true family beyond the temporary relationships of a single lifetime. In his readings, he emphasized that these reunions are not simply comforting illusions, but tangible spiritual realities that follow natural laws as precise as those governing the physical world. What makes these encounters particularly significant is their transformative effect on the dying person. Clinical studies of near-death experiences consistently report that these reunions dissolve fear and replace it with profound peace. Even those who previously feared death often find themselves embraced by a sense of recognition and belonging that transcends their earthly understanding of relationship. Consider the testimony of hospice workers and medical professionals who have witnessed thousands of transitions. They frequently report that dying individuals begin to see and communicate with deceased loved ones hours or even days before physical death occurs. The dying person may speak aloud to these visitors invisible to others in the room, or their expressions may suddenly transform from distress to joy as they recognize someone beloved approaching from beyond the veil. These family reunions serve a practical spiritual purpose beyond emotional comfort. The familiar energies of loved ones help the transitioning soul to disengage from physical consciousness, gently drawing them toward the higher vibrations of the spiritual realm. Just as a child learns to walk with the encouraging guidance of parents, the soul learns to navigate its new spiritual reality with the assistance of those who have already mastered that transition. This understanding challenges us to reconsider the nature of death itself. Rather than viewing it as a moment of separation and loss, we might more accurately perceive it as a sacred reunion, a return to our spiritual family after a temporary sojourn in physical form. The boundaries between life and death, seen from this perspective, become more permeable, more fluid than our material consciousness typically allows. For those left behind, this knowledge offers profound comfort. Your loved ones do not face the unknown alone, but are welcomed with open arms by those who have preceded them. The journey beyond physical life begins not in isolation, but in communion with kindred spirits who understand both where the soul has been and where it is going. Beyond the welcoming presence of our departed loved ones, many spiritual traditions speak of luminous beings who serve as guides and protectors during the soul's transition from physical to spiritual existence. These elevated consciousnesses, variously called guardian angels, spirit guides, or light beings, represent a higher order of spiritual assistance that transcends familial connections, embodying universal principles of compassion and divine order. These messengers of light are not bound by the same karmic patterns or emotional attachments as family members. They function as emissaries of higher spiritual realms, their presence manifesting as radiant light that communicates directly with the essence of the transitioning soul. Unlike our loved ones who come to offer familiar comfort, These beings bring a transcendent quality of peace that helps the soul release its identification with physical existence altogether. Numerous accounts from near-death experiences describe encounters with beings of extraordinary luminosity, entities that radiate unconditional love while maintaining a profound sense of spiritual authority. These beings are often perceived as guiding presences rather than distinct personalities, though they may assume recognizable forms to ease communication with souls still accustomed to physical perception. Their light is frequently described as brighter than anything experienced in material existence, yet it does not blind or overwhelm. Instead, it clarifies and illuminates the soul's understanding. The function of these light messengers extends beyond mere greeting or comfort. They serve as spiritual navigators, helping the soul orient itself in the vast new dimensions it encounters after physical death. Just as sailors once relied on celestial bodies to guide their journeys across uncharted oceans, the departing soul relies on these luminous presences to navigate the transition between worlds. They provide not only direction, but also protection, ensuring that the soul's journey proceeds according to higher spiritual laws, rather than being influenced by lower astral energies or confused thought patterns. These benevolent guides appear to fulfill different roles depending on the spiritual development and karmic circumstances of the transitioning soul. For some, they serve primarily as protectors, creating a corridor of light that shields the newly released consciousness from disorienting or disturbing influences. For others, they function as teachers, helping the soul to understand the meaning of the life just completed and preparing it for the life review that many traditions describe as following physical death. The appearance of these guides is not arbitrary, but follows spiritual principles of resonance and attraction. As the mystical traditions have long taught, like attracts like in the spiritual realms. Those who have cultivated awareness of higher realities during physical life, through meditation, prayer, service, or conscious spiritual development, naturally attract messengers of corresponding spiritual elevation at the moment of transition. The quality of consciousness we maintain in life creates pathways for similar qualities to reach us at death. This understanding was elucidated in the spiritual insights of Cayce, who described how these light beings work in coordination with departed loved ones. While family members provide emotional reassurance and familiarity, these higher guides facilitate the soul's adaptation to spiritual laws and frequencies that transcend personal relationships. Together, they form a comprehensive support system for the transitioning consciousness, addressing both its human needs for connection and its divine potential for expansion. The light these messengers emanate is not merely symbolic, but represents actual spiritual substance, a higher vibrational energy that helps transform the soul's perception and awareness. This light serves as both beacon and nourishment, drawing the soul upward while simultaneously strengthening its capacity to function in purely spiritual dimensions. Many who have glimpsed these realms through near-death experiences report that this light communicates complete understanding without words, conveying complex spiritual truths instantaneously through direct transmission. For those approaching physical death with consciousness and spiritual preparation, these messengers can sometimes be perceived before the final transition. Hospice workers and spiritual counselors have documented countless instances of dying individuals describing radiant beings standing in the corners of their rooms or hovering near the ceiling. Observations often made with remarkable clarity, even when the person is otherwise physically deteriorating. These pre-death visions suggest that the messengers begin their work of guidance before the final separation of spirit from body. Understanding the role of these light beings offers profound reassurance about the intelligent and compassionate order underlying the death transition. We are not cast adrift in formless chaos when we leave our physical bodies, but are received into a precisely organized spiritual ecosystem where specialized beings fulfill specific functions in service to the soul's ongoing evolution. Among the most profound and transformative spiritual encounters reported during the transition from physical to spiritual life is the presence of Jesus Christ. This manifestation represents not the religious icon constrained by dogma and doctrine, but rather the universal embodiment of divine love and compassion that transcends all boundaries of tradition and belief. The Christ consciousness appears not as judge or authority, but as a luminous presence of unconditional acceptance that envelops the transitioning soul in perfect understanding. What distinguishes the Christ presence from other spiritual entities encountered during this passage is its unique quality of all-encompassing love coupled with complete recognition. Those who report experiencing this presence consistently describe a sense of being fully known. Their entire being, with all its complexities, contradictions, and hidden depths, is perceived and embraced without judgment. This experience of being utterly seen and completely accepted creates a profound healing that many describe as the essence of spiritual salvation, not as theological concept, but as lived reality. The appearance of this Christ consciousness does not depend on religious affiliation during life. There are numerous accounts of individuals who maintained no formal religious practice, or who followed entirely different spiritual traditions, yet encountered the unmistakable presence of Jesus during their transition. This suggests that the Christ presence responds not to outward profession of faith, but to the inner qualities of the soul, its capacity for love, its struggles toward truth, its efforts to transcend ego limitations. The Christ meets each soul where it is, in the form most meaningful to that particular consciousness. For some, this presence manifests as the historical Jesus, recognizable from traditional imagery, yet radiating a living reality that transcends all artistic representations. For others, particularly those from non-Christian backgrounds, the same essential consciousness may appear in forms associated with their own spiritual understanding, as light, as cosmic love, as the perfect embodiment of compassion. The outer form adapts to the perceiver, while the inner essence remains consistent, unconditional love, joined with perfect wisdom. Cayce's spiritual insights describe this Christ presence as the highest vibrational energy accessible to human consciousness, a divine love that serves as bridge between the human and the absolute. In this understanding, the appearance of Christ at death represents not a supernatural intervention, but the natural resonance between the awakening soul and the highest spiritual frequencies available to it. As the physical body releases its hold, the soul becomes capable of perceiving spiritual realities previously filtered by material limitations. The Christ presence serves several essential functions during this transition. First, it provides absolute reassurance that love, not judgment, not punishment, is the fundamental reality of spiritual existence. This assurance dissolves the fears and guilt that might otherwise complicate the soul's passage. Second, it establishes a vibrational template that helps the soul align with its own highest potential, accelerating its spiritual evolution. Third, it creates a protective field that ensures the soul's transition proceeds according to divine pattern, rather than being influenced by lower astral forces or the soul's own unresolved thought patterns. Many who have glimpsed this reality through near-death experiences report that the Christ light communicates directly with the essence of who they are, bypassing intellectual understanding to reach the core of their being. This communication often conveys complex spiritual truths instantaneously, providing more genuine knowledge in moments than years of theological study could impart. The presence does not lecture or instruct, but rather illuminates, allowing the soul to see with clarity both its own nature and its relationship to divine reality. This compassionate presence appears to adapt its approach to the specific needs of each transitioning soul. For those burdened by guilt or shame, it manifests as forgiveness so complete that it restructures the soul's understanding of itself. For those confused or disoriented by the transition, it provides perfect clarity and guidance. For those who lived with spiritual awareness, it represents the fulfillment of their deepest recognition, the direct experience of what they had previously known through faith or intuition. What emerges from countless testimonies across diverse cultures and time periods is that this Christ consciousness does not conform to any single religious interpretation. It transcends all human attempts to categorize or limit it, functioning instead as the purest expression of divine love accessible to human perception. In this light, the theological debates that have divided humanity for centuries dissolve before the direct experience of this presence, a presence that unifies rather than separates, that heals rather than condemns. For those preparing for their own eventual transition, this understanding offers profound reassurance. The journey beyond physical existence is not a passage into judgment, but an encounter with love beyond human comprehension, a love perfectly tailored to the needs of each individual soul. This love does not demand perfection as prerequisite, but meets each consciousness exactly where it is, offering exactly what it most needs for its continued evolution and unfoldment. The Christ presence thus represents not the end of the soul's journey, but a divine illumination that reveals the path forward, a path guided not by fear or obligation, but by the soul's own awakening to its true nature and purpose within the greater spiritual reality. The nature of our transition from physical to spiritual existence is not arbitrary, but follows precise spiritual laws that respond to the consciousness we have developed throughout our earthly sojourn. Just as a compass needle aligns with magnetic forces invisible to the eye, our souls naturally orient towards spiritual frequencies that correspond to our inner development. This principle of spiritual resonance determines not only who greets us at the threshold of death, but also the quality and clarity of our experience during this profound passage. Those who have cultivated higher awareness through love, service, meditation, and conscious spiritual practice naturally attract corresponding spiritual assistance. Their transition often unfolds with greater ease and luminosity, characterized by clear perception and peaceful adaptation to non-physical existence. This is not because they are arbitrarily rewarded for good behavior, but because they have developed the spiritual faculties necessary to perceive and integrate with higher vibrational realities. Just as a trained musician can hear harmonies inaudible to the untrained ear, the spiritually developed soul perceives dimensions of reality that remain invisible to consciousness still fixated on material concerns. Conversely, souls that have remained deeply attached to physical pleasures, material possessions, or egoic gratification may experience a more challenging transition. Without having developed the spiritual muscles necessary for navigating non-physical dimensions, they may find themselves temporarily disoriented or confused. These souls are never abandoned. Universal compassion ensures that appropriate guidance is always available, but their own resistance and attachments may temporarily limit their ability to perceive and receive the assistance offered. This understanding appears throughout the world's wisdom traditions, though expressed through different metaphors and frameworks. In Buddhist teachings, the state of consciousness at the moment of death is considered crucial for determining the soul's journey through the bardos or transitional states. Hindu traditions speak of the subtle pathways that open according to the soul's karmic accumulations and spiritual awareness. Christian mysticism describes how the soul naturally gravitates toward light or shadow based on its own inner affinity. The spiritual rescue teams that operate during these transitions work with profound understanding of these principles. For souls who transition with spiritual preparation, these teams often serve primarily as guides and companions, helping the soul to navigate the expanded awareness and possibilities of spiritual existence. For those who depart suddenly through accident or violence, without psychological or spiritual preparation, these teams may provide more intensive support, creating protective fields of energy that shield the soul from shock and disorientation, while gradually helping it adjust to its new reality. Particularly challenging are transitions involving souls deeply entangled in addiction, hatred, or extreme materialism. In these cases, the rescue teams may need to work through multiple layers of resistance and confusion. The soul itself may not initially recognize that physical death has occurred, or may cling to familiar patterns and locations out of fear of the unknown. The spiritual helpers must then create conditions that gradually awaken the soul to its new state without overwhelming its capacity to adapt. This process may involve creating temporary, halfway environments that bridge physical and spiritual realities until the soul develops greater readiness for higher awareness. The most effective preparation for this inevitable transition is not religious formalism or intellectual knowledge of spiritual theories, but the actual practice of spiritual qualities during physical life. Every act of genuine love expands the soul's capacity to perceive and integrate with the love that forms the foundation of higher spiritual dimensions. Every moment of mindful awareness strengthens the consciousness that will navigate the transition beyond physical limitations. Every choice to prioritize compassion over self-interest aligns the soul with the fundamental nature of the spiritual reality it will enter. This understanding transforms how we might approach our remaining time in physical embodiment. Rather than viewing spiritual practice as obligation or abstract pursuit, we can recognize it as practical preparation for the most significant journey our consciousness will undertake. The development of awareness, compassion, forgiveness, and present moment consciousness becomes not merely a path to a more fulfilled life, but the cultivation of faculties essential for our continued evolution beyond physical existence. Those who dedicate themselves to sincere spiritual practice during life often report heightened awareness of the spiritual presences that accompany all souls, not only at death, but throughout physical existence. The veil between worlds thins not only at the moment of transition, but whenever consciousness elevates beyond its ordinary limitations. Through meditation, prayer, service, and conscious living, we can develop an ongoing relationship with the spiritual guides and helpers who will eventually assist our transition, creating familiarity and trust that will serve us when the moment of passage arrives. The quality of consciousness we maintain in our final moments holds particular significance, as it represents the vibrational state from which we launch into purely spiritual existence. This is why many wisdom traditions emphasize the importance of peaceful, mindful death when circumstances permit. A conscious transition, undertaken with spiritual awareness and surrender, creates optimal conditions for the soul's journey onward. This understanding has given rise to various spiritual practices specifically designed to be undertaken during the dying process. Mantras, visualizations, breathing techniques, and guided meditations that help focus and elevate consciousness during this critical passage. Ultimately, what determines the quality of our transition is not the specific belief system we espouse, but the degree to which we have actualized love, awareness, and spiritual understanding in our lives. The soul that has lived in harmony with universal spiritual principles naturally returns to those harmonies at death, recognized and welcomed by the corresponding frequencies of light and love that constitute the higher dimensions of existence. In this profound sense, we create our own afterlife experience through the consciousness we develop here and now, in each moment of our earthly journey. If this exploration of life's final transition has sparked something within you, don't let this moment pass. Subscribe now to continue our spiritual journey together and receive wisdom that transforms how you view both life and what lies beyond. What beings do you believe will welcome your soul? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective may be exactly what another seeker needs to hear today. Remember, understanding death helps us live more fully. Subscribe, comment, and join our community of spiritual explorers as we uncover these profound truths together.